Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new edition of the Lasching Out Podcast, Nittany Sports Now Network. I'm your host, Jarrod Prugar, joined by my good friend and co-host, Kevin Quigley. Kevin, Penn State is going bowling. They outlasted Rutgers in a game that featured little to no defense until the very end when Penn State's vaunted defense stepped up and in the most Rutgers way possible, took a fumble in the end zone for a touchdown to put the exclamation point on a victory. Then Terry Smith finished the game out. Ethan Grunkelmeyer, 4th and 2 from the 10, gets 3 yards, and poof, game is over. They learned from Indiana, and now this team is going bowling. They'll find that out next Sunday, December 7th. Maybe by then they'll have a head coach, but we'll talk about that more later. Let's talk a little bit about the game. This was a pretty good microcosm of how things went under Terry Smith. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down. They were aggressive when they needed to be. The downfield pass was there. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton were exactly as advertised, who they thought they were going to be from the beginning of the season. And that's exactly what Penn State needed offensively. I say Andy Kotelnicki had a really, really good game, and Penn State's offense executed.
Yeah, and just to get ahead of it, it's 9:08 on Sunday evening of November 30th. So by the time this publishes at 2 a.m. on December 1st, Penn State does not currently have a coach, so hopefully this episode will not be obsolete by the time you're watching this. The Rutgers game was something. Offense looked great. Defense looked equally as bad. Like you said, Katron and Nick were just doing what they needed to do, but man, that defensive performance, I really hope the next coach is either a defensive guy and can help, figure out with Jim Knowles, like how to make this defense successful, or just that the year 2 trend under Jim Knowles continues, because every year where he has been, the first year has been awful, and the second year the defense makes a big jump. This kind of felt like just one of those things, and good thing for Penn State is next year Dom DeLuca is not on the roster, so teams can't just run the ball at the space that Dom DeLuca avoids, and chooses to go outside instead of protecting for the run up the middle or whatever else Dom DeLuca was doing on Saturday afternoon. Not good for the defense, not good from Dom, but they get the win. Rutgers is still winless against Penn State in the Big Ten, which is always good. It did not feel like that was going to be the case, especially when Rutgers took the lead. So happy with the win.
You're right. I think that's the biggest thing. They got out of there with the win. And yes, Penn State did play football Saturday. I know it seems like that was a long time ago, but they did play football. This coaching search has been it's just engulfed everything. But they did win the game. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the final drive for Rutgers, you kind of thought that, oh shit, here we go again, right? They make the incredible play, top 10 play, top number 1 play, top 10, one of the best catches I've seen all year. You're like, oh man, here we go again. Well, then, they give up the scoop and score, which was bizarre in and of itself. But Penn State offensively came out, did a great job. Ethan Grunkelmeyer's development over the past 4, 5, 6 games has been absolutely incredible. He was 17 to 21, 209 and a touchdown. Did a great job, made the right reads, which is something he wasn't doing early in the season. And granted, I get it. His first 3 games were Ohio State, Indiana, and Iowa. Like, that's 3 of the best defenses in the Big Ten. Obviously, things are much different against Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers. But he came out, and you see that development growing. You see that growth. Anytime you can have an 81% completion percentage while also throwing the ball down the field is a good thing. Didn't turn the ball over, played a really good game. And the fact that they're feeding Katron Allen the ball, another game where he went over 20 carries, 226 yards. He had a 55-yard rush, averaged 10.3 yards a clip, and a touchdown. So, I mean, good things are happening offensively. And we touched on it defensively. Penn State's not playing good gap sound football. These defensive linemen are getting washed up. Denai Dennis Sutton there for a long time was getting absolutely worked. And then he finally started making plays there at the end when it mattered the most, which is exactly what you need from your best players. But he was getting worked by that Rutgers offensive line. You could tell that the Scarlet Knights had a lot to play for. They were playing for Greg Schiano's 100th win, but also bowl eligibility. And when you're desperate, you do desperate things. And they threw for 338 yards, and it was a really well played game by the Scarlet Knights, and that wasn't exactly what we expected. I don't think we expected a shootout by any means, but at the end of the day, Penn State won. They are bowl eligible, and there's an opportunity for more development coming soon for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I think that Rutgers team was hungry. Like you mentioned, Schiano was going for his 100th win. If you're watching the Fox broadcast or the Big Ten Network broadcast, they had that stupid little checklist going on. I did not want to hear the celebratory jingle when all of those check boxes got on or were completed. The last one would have been Schiano's 100th win. So I'm happy that did not get happy we did not get a Yahtzee there. Yeah, Ethan Grunkemeyer was 17 to 21 passing. He was efficient. A lot of them came on, the big plays, but just his development, his growth, like the confidence that I have in this team going forward. Sure, pretty much all of the offensive line is going to graduate. Obviously, Nick and Katron are going to graduate. The receiving core is going to graduate, but I'm not sure we're missing much there. Rapelier is going to be back. Dinkins is gone. Reynolds should be back as long as none of these guys transfer to go over to Virginia Tech. But there's good bones there in the offense now, it seems like, and that's probably a credit to Terry Smith. I don't even know if it's a credit to Andy Kotelnicki. Terry Smith has been able to wrangle in Kotelnicki. We haven't had the trick plays, and any sort of deception was well thought out. The 4th and 2 play, they put Rapelier in as a fullback. I think they had gone with the fullback dive earlier in the game with Nick Singleton in that offset eye. They've gone, I think Katron went left on that, and then Rapelier just snuck out and just wasn't a factor in the play. And then finally on 4th and 2, Rapelier sneaks out and gets that. And I do believe on the first drive of the game, they had they ran 2 plays from the same formation, one on 2nd down. Can't quite remember what that play was, but it perfectly set up the 3rd or 4th down play on that drive.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the first 4th down of the game. I can pull that up. But like the offense was well thought out, which is not something that we've been able to say much in the Andy Kotelnicki era.
They've simplified things on both sides of the football. Obviously, you didn't really see that defensively. And I don't necessarily attribute the lack of success defensively to Jim Knowles. I think what he was trying to do, honestly, is probably going to work. But when Zachy Wheatley, and this is no knock on him, is making plays as the first defender to see a guy at the second level, that's a bad thing. And that's not a knock on Zachy. He's done a great job. I think he's been probably their best, most consistent defensive back all year. Obviously, Amari Campbell has been a phenomenal linebacker, but everybody just kept getting, sucked in, and they weren't playing gap-aligned football. In this scheme, you have to. And when you're getting washed up or you're just getting washed out of the play, Kirk Ciarrocca called a great game. And yes, that Kirk Ciarrocca was the OC.
I totally forgot about Kirk Ciarrocca.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully year 2 is a little different depending on – but that's the thing now is everything is up in the air, right? Penn State doesn't know where they're going bowling. I'm guessing it's probably going to be one of Nashville in the Music City Bowl, New York City in the Pinstripe Bowl, or Detroit in the I forget what bowl games there. Some sports bowl. It's all the same. You can find my bowl projections on NSN where I actually do have the right names, but they don't know where they're going. They don't know who their coach is going to be. But if this was Terry Smith's last game, damn, was his 6th game. Like, I know it was 3-3, but they were an impressive 3-3. That was an impressive 6 games. And again, I know the first 3 games were, Iowa, Ohio State, and in Indiana. Like, I get it. But you can see the development week by week. And we've talked about that at length on this podcast. That development wasn't there. It hasn't been there in a long, long time. He got better as a coach. Obviously, he learned from his mistakes. Penn State was overly aggressive. I thought it was absolutely insanely ballsy to go for it, 4th and 2 at the 10. You could easily kick a field goal, go up 7 points. But the dude went for the jugular, and I love that. Like, that was the over-aggressiveness that people wanted and dreamt Franklin could be, but never sniffed it. It was the complete antithesis of James Franklin in the best way possible. And when you have that belief in your team, that team, it shows. And it shows in them doing everything they needed to do to get the victory. And lo and behold, now they somehow, some way, they ended up 6-6 and they're bowl eligible. And I think that is a testament to Terry Smith and the staff that kept this team together.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I was paying attention the whole time you were talking. I promise. The first touch, it was the first touchdown of the game. On second down, they ran kind of that motion with Khalil Dinkins and had him block, and then they handed the ball off to Katron Allen up the middle. That was a dive play. And then on the 4th and 1, they ran the same motion with Dinkins. Dinkins did the same block. That time, Katron Allen snuck out to the flat on a pass route. The defense sold out for the run because they saw the Khalil Dinkins motion. Then the linebacker had to cover Katron Allen, and that left Andrew Rapplier wide open for that's the sort of stuff that we've not seen all season long from, or pretty much all tenure long of Andy Kotelnicki, is like that level of offensive planning. So to see that was awesome.
I truly wonder how hamstrung his playbook and offense were under James Franklin, because Franklin is known for not being aggressive. Like, there isn't an aggressive bone in Franklin's body. Unless he's passive aggressively talking to reporters or whatever. But so I'm very curious to see how that is. But Kotelnicki's growth has been great to see. You know, Jim Knowles, the defense has played pretty well outside of this game. I mean, again, they got away from playing their style of football, and it cost them. But again, that was a hungry Rutgers team, and such is life. But at the end of the day, you know, you still won. And that's and that's what matters the most.
I really liked going for that 4th and 2 at the end of the game. Sorry, I've been bouncing around on you.
No, you're good. I agree.
I really liked going for it there. Rutgers was out of timeouts. There's barely over a minute left. I think the clock was at 102, 104, something like that. So like, even if you don't get it, let's say it's a 4 or 5 second play, Rutgers has no timeouts, and they've got 90 yards to get to the house because they were down 4. So it was a very calculated decision, but 4th and 2, obviously every team has that 4th and 5 or less, or 4th and 3 or less play call that they go to. They'll install it that week of practice, and when it's do or die, 4th and 2, we need to get this. This is the play we're going to do. And they did it. They must have had multiple, because the 4th and 1 to Rapplier that I just talked about, that was probably one of them. And then that 4th and 2 was another one. Ironically, both of them were Rapplier. And Rapplier didn't really see the field a lot. And, you know, Kobe Howard was not in the offense because he, quote unquote, couldn't run block. I think he had a key run block that sprung one of the big runs. I can't remember which one. And then but at the same time, Luke Reynolds, who couldn't run block to save his life, he was getting a lot of the snaps at tight end. So Franklin definitely had his favorites, definitely was hamstrung in the offense in some way, because this offense at post Franklin and the offense before Franklin, I don't know if Franklin was just that obsessed with the trick play and was like, Andy, like, we need all of these. Like, I'm so inconfident in our ability to beat teams straight up that we need to go 100% on the gimmicks. Now, the quarterback situation probably is playing a factor, because you can't be risky with Grunkemeyer, because, you know, Liam Clifford's your backup, but he was unavailable yesterday. And there was a freshman, Jack Lambert.
Yes.
Jack Lambert, walk-on quarterback, who actually had to warm up in the game because Ethan got hit at the knees. Like, the backup quarterback yesterday was a walk-on. Not an ideal situation. So hopefully they can find a coach. Hopefully they can figure out this quarterback room, because I don't know, are Smolik and Beckham Kritza going to Virginia Tech? Like, I know Smolik got hurt, but Kritza wasn't available bulk of the season. His availability didn't really matter because he was 4th, but both of them have been unavailable, I think, consistently the last 3 weeks. Something tells me maybe Smolik and Kritza are probably on the run.
That's the other thing to me. You know, I'm 95% sure, and this is just speculation, that Smolik broke his wrist or broke his hand against Iowa because they ran that 2 QB system. But we see how competent things are offensively when that doesn't happen, when you have that flow and you don't get into that style of football. Best thing to happen for the Penn State offense was that Liam Clifford got to go to quarterback. It kind of took him away from wide receiver position, but it forced guys like Kobe Howard to have to block. And Kobe Howard's growth, his play has been good. Rapplier, I thought, has been and should have been tight end number 1 this year. He got the bulk of the yards. Listen, there's a 4th and 3, I think it was, to Trevor Pena that they converted on that was great too. I mean, the offense has come in, has worked out well. And I think the other thing that people are forgetting about all of this, and maybe it's just kind of lost in the sauce because there's just so much going on right now with the program, is that Ethan Runkelmeyer is the backup quarterback. Penn State played their last 6 games with their backup quarterback after, obviously James Franklin gets fired, Drew Aller breaks his ankle. And, again, he was in it against Iowa. He was in it against Indiana. He was in it for a chunk against Ohio State and still manages to go 3-3. Phenomenal job by Runkelmeyer. Phenomenal job by Terry Smith. But we're going to talk about whether this is Terry Smith's job when we come back, or what else is going on in the coaching carousel when we come back for the second segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the second segment. And no, Penn State is not hired a coach. It's not either myself or Kevin, my co-host. But this coaching saga, and it's a saga at this point, because the carousel is quickly spinning. There are teams that are getting in on the action. There are 2 coaches signed within 10 minutes today. John Summerall of Florida. Then you had Alex Golesh at Auburn, which I think are really, really good hires. I think it's Ryan Silverfield from Memphis, who's now at Arkansas. So those 3 big schools, I wouldn't say Arkansas is big, but they've made their decisions. And, of course, the most exhausting coaching search or coaching saga I've ever experienced, Lane Kiffin is officially at LSU. He left Oxford to some boos and some middle fingers and some choice words. And you know what? I get it. I get it for a lot of different reasons. But this didn't have to happen. We talked about this on the podcast pregame. This is an NCAA problem. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I think that it was realistic for him to think that he could coach in the bowl game if he was signed a contract for another school? Absolutely the hell not. I mean, let's be real. Kevin, if I went and got another teaching job and I was held for 60 days, I have to be held for 60 days. It's a little different. I go work for, Allstate. And I work for State Farm. They're cutting I don't get a 2-week notice, right? I'm gone. You don't have that. And it's funny because you talked about Coach Saban and talking to Coach Carroll. And listen, having guys like that in your back pocket is phenomenal as a coach, as mentors. Those guys are 2 great men. But Saban didn't let him coach at Alabama as a coordinator when he took a head coaching job at Florida Atlantic. Let's be real. And we talked about this before we came on. You don't want to leave your team? Don't go to LSU. Stay at Ole Miss. It was really that simple. I don't know why it played out the way that it did. ESPN, the worldwide leader in suck, I think had a big impact on it. Did they really need Marty Snyder or Marty Smith to be there forever? No. But at the same time, Ole Miss ends up with their coach too. And, at the end of the day, we sit there, we watch it, and college football is one of those absurd sports that this had us on the edge of our seats for days. And that is absolutely crazy to say.
Yeah, the other coach that got hired today was potentially Pat Fitzgerald to Michigan State. So kind of surprising that Michigan State moved on from their coach, although not really, but it wasn't really talked about a lot outside of Michigan State. It wasn't on either of our radars.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you expect him to do? I fail to see that because Mel Tucker completely screwed that program, and I'm not trying to be facetious or anything, given his issues and the shit that he did off the field, but they completely boned that program. There was not much that he could do. But Pat Fitzgerald I think that's a really good hire, honestly, for Michigan State. That's right about where Pat Fitzgerald should be. He had some success at Northwestern, turned them into a reputable program. They had been bad for a long time. But, now that's one job that came open and then that shut. And oh, wow, Penn State just sits there with kind of their thumbs up their ass.
I really thought as the Lane Kiffin saga went on that he had information that we didn't. I didn't really obviously as it was coming out, after the 9 a.m. meeting got canceled because it was supposed to happen Saturday. Nothing happened Saturday. And if it didn't happen Saturday, my thought was, well, the Iron Bowl's at 7:30 p.m. So likely there's not a decision from the Alabama side of things on Saturday. So their team meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Central Time, which of course is 10 a.m. Eastern. That gets delayed, and then everything starts coming out that Lane Kiffin's trying to recruit his offensive coaching staff and giving them an ultimatum that they better be on that jet with him to Baton Rouge, or else they're not going to be on the next step, which I think is a bold decision from Lane Kiffin.
And he came out he did debunk that in his interview with Marty Smith. I don't that's the other thing too. I don't know what's true and what's not true in this entire situation because I think this is a lot of shit.
I mean, Lane Kiffin, of course, is going to have to save face, but I don't think it's any coincidence that Ole Miss is literally doubling the salary of every assistant on their staff left. I think where there's smoke, there is fire there. Lane Kiffin was probably doing Lane Kiffin sleazeball things. Obviously, he was trying to negotiate the college football playoff, but, Lane Kiffin's rep by Jimmy Sexton. So too's Kalen DeBoer. And I thought the longer that went on that, Penn State was going to make a move for DeBoer, who was a Jimmy Sexton client. Lane Kiffin had some information that, Alabama was going to be interested in him. And that's not how it played out. But the longer that Lane Kiffin saga went on, now it started getting heavy for LSU after about 9, 10 a.m. today, but it kind of felt like overnight and early in the morning that was still a potential possibility. Now, can Penn State still hire Kalen DeBoer? Sure. I don't know if he's the number one candidate. There's probably mutual interest there. I don't know if there's enough mutual interest from the other half of that deal to actually leave Alabama. Brian Daboll's getting some traction. That name's getting some traction, and I think still Hartline's in the mix. But where Penn State goes from here, I don't know. National Signing Day is coming up this week. Ideally, they would have hired a coach today. I don't think you can wait until after conference championships. You need somebody in there by tomorrow.
This needs to happen Monday. I mean, let's be real. I mean, Monday's December 1st. I think by the end of the day, Monday, you need to have a coach in place. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. I don't know who it's going to be. I have heard that they have talked to representatives from coaches from Lane Kiffin to Josh Heupel to all kinds of different guys. Pat Kraft is playing this one very close to the vest. Obviously, none of the coaches that were rumored or talked about to go to Penn State went anywhere today. I think Hartline is still very much in play. That call sheet or whatever it is, that betting odds on who's going to be the next head coach. I don't know that those odds are terribly accurate. It's just a bizarre search. Obviously, in 2014, this wasn't a thing. So, I mean, it says Twitter wasn't as big of a deal. Social media wasn't big of a deal. Obviously, you did the flight tracker on the message boards and whatever. But at the same time, this is just one of those deals. I think Pat Kraft knows what he wants to do. I hope that he knows what he wants to do. Because if there are some of the options that I've heard, then you know what? You might as well just go with Terry Smith. And that's not a knock on Terry Smith and thinking that he's less than some of these people, but he's proven that with a backup quarterback, he can win Big Ten games, and there's value in that. I mean, these guys are playing hard for him. I think he retained a lot more of the roster, a lot more of the coaching staff with Terry Smith. I think Terry Smith's a lot easier to work with and work for than a James Franklin type. But it's also probably cheaper because you're probably not honestly getting rid of guys like Kotelnicki or even Jim Knowles. You're probably just riding with it, which is a very bizarre thing to do after firing James Franklin. But again, it's just one of those situations where you just don't know. And Pat Kraft has played this very close to the vest. There's a reason why the names that are leaked by the agents and stuff like that, and it's worked out for Eli Drinkwitz. It's worked out for Mike Elko. It's worked out for Kirk Cinetti. It's worked out for all these guys that are getting long-term extensions at their respective schools. And right now, the way that the college market is, it is easier to take that extension at the school you're at. And now there isn't a single coach who's going to want as bad PR as Lane Kiffin can, as Lane Kiffin is getting right now with this whole entire situation with LSU and Ole Miss, because it is ugly. I don't know that it's all – I mean, a lot of it is Lane Kiffin being Lane Kiffin, but certainly ESPN has had their fair share of making this an even bigger spectacle than what it really needed to be.
Yeah, for sure. I think, luckily for any coaching candidate that's going to be hired, fired, anything else, like the circus that could cause, the pomp and circumstance, is going to be well under what the Lane Kiffin saga leaving Ole Miss was. Like, I don't think you're going to get another 100, 200 fans at the Oxford airport booing the coach as he's getting on the jet to leave to the new program. Like, Lane Kiffin probably did his exit in the worst possible way, and it's one of the worst that we've seen probably in college football, especially as of late. And I think it kind of just points to the issue with the college football calendar, and I think we can probably talk about that later. But yeah, I think for whoever's next, like Brian Hartline leaving Ohio State before the Big Ten championship game or before the playoff, like that doesn't do anything. Like, he just won the game. He was the offensive coordinator for winning the game. He's won a national title there. He's been there forever. Like, he could leave tomorrow and like nobody's going to bat an eye. Kalen DeBoer could leave and nobody's going to bat an eye. The Josh Heupel stuff is weird to me. Like, it doesn't seem like the relationship with him in Tennessee is that bad, but that's kind of just a weird name. And then I don't know. The more I think about it, like, I'm kind of talking myself into like Daboll wouldn't be a bad hire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about Brian Daboll. Obviously, I know that Joe Shane with the Giants is terrible. Obviously, his son is a better general manager than he is. We saw that on Hard Knocks. I mean, we are so late in the process. I do believe that Pat Kraft thought he could get a home run hire and make it really quick, but it's so different now. Like, the landscape has changed, and we talked about this throughout our last podcast, but something needs fixed, and we're going to talk about that, I think, a little bit more in the third segment. But I mean, it's just one of those situations where, who's left, right? I mean, look at, then you have a school like Florida State who got embarrassed by Florida. Mike Norvell still there. They kind of sat on him for a year. I think next year's a lame duck year for Norvell, but it's probably not a bad idea given the way this hiring cycle was going. And I think that's a very weird and peculiar spot. But Penn State, I think, is still in position to get who they want. But to see a DeBoer leave Alabama in the midst of a playoff run, probably not going to happen. Hartline, I can see that's realistic. He's a coordinator. No disrespect. I think he's the coordinator for the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, who finally won against Michigan in Michigan. So I mean, that's an easy one. Can come over and Ryan Day can run the offense. They'll have next man up, and they honestly, I don't think they'll miss a beat. They'll be like Alabama when Saban fired Kiffin. But guys like that, Chesney is still in the mix. Terry Smith, I think, is still in the mix, and it's crazy to say because there's just so many options, and it's hard to kind of look back and in hindsight be like, hey, why did Penn State fire James Franklin to go with Terry Smith, who was on his staff, right? And 6 games ago, I probably would have said, you know what? Yeah, I don't think Terry Smith is an option. I think this is just a nice little stopgap, kind of like Tom Bradley was as interim head coach after Joe Paterno was fired before they hired Bill O'Brien. But the way that the team has rallied around Terry Smith, the way that the Letterman have rallied around Terry Smith, the way that the fans have rallied around Terry Smith has been something unbeknownst to Penn State. This is probably, you want to talk about those buzzwords that James Franklin uses all the time that honestly, in his terms, are probably bullshit. But alignment. This is probably the most aligned Penn State's ever been in one direction in a long time. It's been so long since a Penn State coach has been cheered at Beaver Stadium. Sorry, West Shore home field at Beaver Stadium. But again, they're running out of time to make a decision before National Signing Day. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the schedule and how that goes and why it is awful when we come back for the third and final segment of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jarrod. Kevin, the college football schedule is messed up. It is a tire fire. And, I mean, let's be honest with you. We've talked about this before. The NCAA is purely incompetent. And I have zero faith that they'll do anything that makes sense for players, coaches, or anybody involved in any situation ever at all.
Yeah. And I think we talked about it last week, and I think the Lane Kiffin scenario is really going to make the drive for change much stronger than what it has been in years past. Like Ryan Day bitching about the schedule because he's like, oh, I'm in the national championship game every year. Like, I don't have a chance to keep my roster intact through the transfer portal. I was like, yeah, like Ohio State's probably made the most playoffs out of anybody besides not named Alabama. Like Ohio State and Alabama have to be up there 1-2 in terms of years made the playoffs. So like no one cares when it's Ryan Day complaining about the portal. No one cares when it's Nick Saban complaining about the portal. Sure, they're the top two coaches or the coach of the top two teams. Obviously, Saban's not there anymore. But like, if they're saying things like, it kind of falls on deaf ears because like you guys are still as good as you are. When you get to the Ole Miss situations and coaches who are leaving active head coaching gigs for other head coaching gigs before there's even a chance to play in the playoff, I think that brings a lot more eyes because I think someone had the stat like Ole Miss hadn't won more than 10 games since, or they've won more than 10 games twice since like 1971. Lane Kiffin has done it in 4 years, like 4 years at Ole Miss, and really brought that program back, was going to have a chance to coach in his first college football playoff and decides to leave. And, Mike Farrell had the tweet earlier today that was like, Lane Kiffin's not a victim here. Like he could coach in this college football playoff and there's nothing else wrong. Like there's nothing else to see here. Like the only reason Lane Kiffin's not coaching in the college football playoff is because Lane Kiffin has made the choice to not coach in the college football playoff. The choice, if he wanted to coach in the college football playoff that badly, he'd still be the Ole Miss head coach today, and he'd be the Ole Miss head coach next season. Because the choice is either leave now or you're at Ole Miss next year again. Because the calendar is just so backwards. Like National Signing Day being between the last regular season game of the year and the conference championship game, that's not fair for head coaches that are in conference championship games. Like Miami actually gets a break not being in the ACC title game because now they can actually go do a last second recruiting push. We can talk about that. There's more to unpack there. And then the transfer portal opening up in the middle of the college football playoff, that puts those four programs at the disadvantage. And likely, if you're playing in a conference championship, you're also probably one of the final four teams who are going to get hindered by the transfer portal. So all this stuff needs to change. You and I talked about it. Like this needs to be in February after the Super Bowl. These kids barely go to class anyways. And I'm not saying like take the college out of college athletics. NCAA eligibility is based off of the previous semester's grades. So what the kids do in the fall doesn't really impact spring eligibility or impact spring eligibility. If they don't take spring classes, they can be a summer class mandate where they have to take 6-9 credits, whatever. And that determines their eligibility for this fall semester because like the college calendar and the college football calendar don't line up with each other, and you can't force it to be the college calendar. With as big of a business as college football is, with as much money as these kids are making, you are putting financial decisions of $750,000, $1 million, $2 million, some of the top guys, $8 or $9 million a year. And you're telling them, like, do you care about one semester of college, or do you care about potentially $7-8 million a year or next year to go play? Like, look at Darian Mensah at Duke. Like, he left Tulane for one season for $8 million. And the NCAA can't stand in the way of that. So they have to bend their eligibility rules to let kids transfer in February. Like, if Darian Mensah like went to 2 weeks of class at Tulane, dropped out, all right, he transfers to Duke. Duke's got to pay Tulane back the tuition. They're paying him $8 million. I think they can find $12,000 or $15,000 to pay off the tuition, or Mensah has to pay that back. Like, they can figure that part out. That's water under the bridge. But this calendar being so messed up, like, it puts so much pressure on the 3 days between when the regular season ends and National Signing Day, and then the transfer portal. Like, it leads to all of this. Like, that's the reason Lane Kiffin's been rumored to be going to UF and LSU for a month. It's because they fired their coaches so early in the cycle, and Penn State's coaching carousel circus hasn't been as prominent. It's prominent for us, but not nationally. But like, all of this stuff is happening because you need as much time to get your next coach. And with the calendar, it puts pressure on that, and it puts that pressure into the end of the regular season. And it takes away from the kids who are actually trying to better themselves, trying to go to college, get their education, trying to go to the NFL or do whatever they want to do after they're done with college ball, that the NCAA is actually shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because we talked about it in the last podcast and things that we would do to fix it. Everything needs to be moved back. I mean, let's be real. You know, there are only a certain amount of teams that are playing conference championship weekend, which is great for them. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be playing and getting a bye anyway. Move the start of the playoffs up. They don't need to be December 19th and 20th. Move it up. And with that, move up the Army-Navy game. Move the season, start the season a week earlier. Maybe take out that second bye week. Do you really need 2 bye weeks in a 12-game schedule? No, probably not. I mean, I know we talk about for the kids or whatever, but I mean, this is the NCAA. Let's be real. I mean, the NFL gets it because it's a 17-game schedule, but now
they're only one bye
right,
week.
Right, exactly. So I mean, it is what it is. So move everything up, and then boom, that's gonna, and then honestly, like, just end your season with, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to be. End it with Rose Bowl, the national championship game. After the Rose Bowl happens, it's January 1st. Most teams are still on break. Most schools are still on break. That's when the portal opens. Immediately after the national championship game. By then, everybody knows anyway. Keep the national signing day the way that it should have been. I think it was February. Again, if you're going to sign, you're going to go and enroll early. You're just going to go back to what you did before. I mean, it's really not that complicated. The NCAA had a chance to get involved in NIL, said no, and now they're reaping the rewards of that. And by rewards, I mean it's an absolute tire fire. And now this situation. I mean, listen, I don't think that Lane Kiffin should coach the Ole Miss in the bowl game unless he is the coach at Ole Miss. Your decisions have consequences. Your actions have consequences. It's that simple. That's life. I just, we think he should finish it. Listen, don't hate the player, hate the game. I mean, this is an NCAA issue. This is, it's exacerbated because Lane Kiffin is Lane Kiffin. But I mean, you have to fix this schedule, and you have to do it quickly, because it's the same way for college basketball too. I mean, every sport in college, you have to figure out a way to fix this. You have to figure out a way that's going to make this better for everybody involved and give them the best opportunities to be student athletes, but also the coaches to make decisions that are right. Did this feel rushed? Yes, 100% it felt rushed. Every coaching search now is undoubtedly rushed. And I think that's a significant factor in all these coaches that are signing extensions. but also just the way that the coaching carousel has played out.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to see that in this offseason that there is some sort of seismic change. I mean, they've basically changed the rules of the college football playoff like a week before the season started, where we're not doing the straight seeding, or we're doing straight seeding instead of the conference champions getting the automatic bye. That might have actually happened during the season. I feel like it felt like the rules just changed. So if they're willing to do that, then there needs to be calendar changes, and they've got plenty of time to do it before August. The end of
Real
August
quick,
next
to
week.
put this in perspective, when James Franklin signed with Penn State, it was January 11th, 2014.
Yeah, like
you
when
know,
did Bill O'Brien? When was Bill O'Brien hired as for the Texans?
Let me look that up. Go ahead with what you were trying to say.
Sorry, I'll get it up. Let's see. Bill O'Brien was hired on January 3rd, so a little bit different. But I mean, the fact that he was still willing to leave on January 3rd and it didn't feel. I mean, if he's leaving, he doesn't care. But let's get to our picks, because we need to. In our picks, we picked some conference games that we might have some more things to talk about. Obviously, so we picked Penn State Rutgers. We both picked Penn State. We're good there. We both picked Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl. We are good there. We both picked Georgia in the Battle of Cons versus Astronauts. TAMU, Texas A&M, faced off against Texas. Hook 'em Horns. First time I've ever been positive about Texas. I picked the Horns. You picked the Aggies. So I one-upped you there. Arizona, Battle of the Desert State. I picked the Wildcats. You picked the Sun Devils. So +1 for me there too. We both picked Ohio State to win the game over Michigan. Virginia Tech got absolutely embarrassed by UVA. Not that the Commonwealth Cup has been remarkably in Virginia Tech's favor for a while. UVA was a 9.5-point favorite, but that game was far more lopsided than we thought it would be. We both picked Tennessee over Vanderbilt, so that's an error on our part. Vanderbilt looked really impressive over Tennessee, it's something. There's going to be a lot of clamoring that we should be in the 12-team playoff from a lot of teams going on. We'll probably talk about that next week, but let's get to the ACC. We both picked.
Oh, man. Yes, I'm so glad you brought up the ACC.
We both picked Pitt to win over Miami. That's our bad.
Yeah, do you think, you finally put eggs in a Pitt basket, and Pat Narduzzi came through in a big way, losing by 1 million. So, kudos to him. And it's funny, though, because Miami still won't make the playoff, most likely.
So the ACC they don't have divisions anymore. They got rid of their divisions. I think when they added Stanford and Cal, they used to have the Coastal and the Atlantic. Not as good as Leaders and Legends, although that was probably a little bit more confusing to determine. But Duke gets in on the fifth tiebreaker by having a better conference opponent combined win-loss. However, when Duke played a team with a winning record, they lost to them. They lost versus Georgia Tech. That was a ranked game. And they lost against Virginia, which was a ranked game. They played Illinois early in the season, and we saw that Illinois is not who we thought they were. They're 0-3 against ranked teams this year. And somehow, because their conference opponents have a better win record, they get in. And man,
I love it. I love chaos. I'm here for chaos. A 5-way tie for second place is diabolical. A 5-way tie after Duke at 6, so from 7th on, is insane too. Everybody is 4-4, which is insanity. And if you want to talk about mediocre, you can't spell it without ACC. But I love it. Obviously, those letters don't work out, but it's better than spelling out ass, which is what the ACC is. And now, because of this, if Duke were to beat Virginia, which I don't know that that's possible, Virginia is having a really, really good year. There's a very good chance that they will then not be part of the automatic qualifiers to make it into the college football playoff as a Power 5 or Power 4 conference champion.
There's a good chance that Tulane.
Power 5. Tulane and James Madison could end up getting in over an ACC team, and I want that situation in the absolute worst way.
Duke has lost to the UVA earlier in the season. The week after losing to UConn, that is your ACC title game representative. Meanwhile, Miami, and you and I were both not advocates for Miami. They did beat Notre Dame at home. They do have a ranked win against South Florida. They do have a ranked win against Florida State, ranked at the time. And then they do have a ranked win against Pitt. I don't think you can tie the tiebreakers to record against teams that are ranked. I think that's a dangerous precedent because then you can have that. But somebody on Twitter, I forget who it was, and I don't want to throw them under the bus and be wrong about it, but they were talking how like the ACC should override their tiebreaker rules and just put
Nicole
Miami in.
Auerbach. Yeah,
Was it Nicole? I had a feeling it was, but she's known for some pretty dumb takes on Twitter or just in life in general. Her writing's pretty suspect at times, but you can't change the rules the week of the championship game. Like, this is just a weird scenario for the ACC. And man, it's college football. It's why we love the sport so much. I don't think we have to worry about UVA losing to Duke and Charlotte next week, but man, I kind of want to go down to Charlotte and see what the hell happens.
It is a disaster, man. I love it. I want nothing more than that. I think this is what makes college football incredible, because the Mountain West is in a weird situation too. They had a 3-way tie. Boise State ends up hosting the game because they won head-to-head against UNLV. San Diego State gets left out, which is very weird. And listen, my beloved Broncos won a tough one against Utah State, but the Mountain West stuff is crazy too. So, I mean, now we're seeing the impacts of these insane super conferences and how bad they really are for the brand or for the game of football. It's great. You have this historic rivalry between Penn State and USC, but it's really just watering down every one of these conferences and not creating a great brand of football. Bring back the actual Big East. Bring back the Pac-12 in a better variety than what it's going to be next year. It's college football has changed and gone the wrong way. It needs to come back to reality than what it was just a few years ago, even back to when James Franklin was hired at Penn State and how different it has been since then in only 12 years. Bill O'Brien was fired or quit his job January 2nd was when he was named, or somewhere around New Year's, when he ended up taking the Houston job. But, I mean, now it's an entire crazy situation. It's something needs fixed as a whole, and I'm not confident the NCAA is capable of fixing it because they can't fix anything. This is the same group of people or whatever that listens to the dollars over the fans, and whatever, and they want to expand the NCAA tournament to 72 teams. Like this, 68 is good enough. 12 is plenty good enough for the college football playoff. We're seeing that even 12 might be too many at this point because of how bad some of these teams are going to be. 2 group of 5 teams making it into the playoff would be absolutely diabolical.
Yeah, and you look like a team like BYU, they have Texas Tech this week. So if they lose, maybe Miami can jump them. JMU could get in, Tulane could get in. And then you got to look at do you even let are there even automatic bids for conference championship games? Because JMU, the 19th ranked team in the country, probably not beating a lot of teams in the top 25. The Sun Belt is incredibly weak this year, just not good at all. And they're going to be in the college football playoffs just because they're in a weak conference. And Miami gets knocked out based on losing and like going out and scheduling Notre Dame and not getting credit for that. So, yeah, tough scenes all around. But this is like the problem is like no matter what you put, where you put the line, there will be somebody one spot below the line that says I should be in because I think I'm better than the team at one spot above the line. You see it at the 68. There's teams bitching about not getting in the NCAA tournament. We saw it in the 14 playoff. Teams not bitching about not getting in. Florida State famously has a gripe. Don't think they should have gotten in with their quarterback situation at the time. And then, we saw it last year. You're going to see it this year where Vanderbilt's already crying about it. Texas is crying about it. Miami potentially is going to be left out. And it's just BYU is going to be potentially. I don't think BYU is as good as their record indicates either, but just a lot of tough scenes all around.
It is, and it's not going to get any better until somebody steps up and does something. It's going to be crazier. We will have everything you need to know for the coaching search whenever it happens. Our plan is to bring you an emergency podcast that day and go from there. We don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows. I would expect it to happen within the next 72 hours. I would hope that it happens in the next 72 hours. But the only person that knows what's going on right now is Pat Kraft. And Penn State fans have to trust that he's going to make the right decision. He's done a lot of great things at the university so far. He's done nothing but want to win national championships and is willing to do whatever it takes. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But, Kevin, before we go, any final parting shots?
I wasn't going to do one, but I'm going to do one. If you're in traffic, just sit in traffic. We driving on Thanksgiving weekend, went up to, west of Philadelphia area, and a lot of traffic. We were sitting in some traffic on 95 South, as you usually do near Fredericksburg. And a lot of traffic was getting exacerbated by people getting onto the exit ramp, on ramp, off ramp, and then jumping around and then merging back in and creating more traffic. So don't be a dick. Just, you're making it worse for everybody. You're not special than everybody. You're not better than everybody else. So
if this podcast can be summed up, if you're still listening, into one statement, given what we talked about, honestly, it's a perfect summation of the difference between Terry Smith and James Franklin, Lane Kiffin in the coaching searches, and now traffic and Kevin being a traffic cop. Don't be a dick. It's that simple. That's all we've got for Lashing Out Podcast today. We'll bring you everything you need to know for the coaching search, for the bowl games, as we progress throughout this week. We thank you as always for listening to Lashing Out Podcast and the Nittany Sports Now Network. We'll catch you again later this week.